The rain battered the windshield as the old pickup truck roared down the empty highway, carrying 3 identical faces lit by the dashboard's glow. Ethan, Noah, and Caleb, the Miller triplets, had been running from their past for years. But tonight, it was catching up. At 23, they were bound by more than blood, a shared secret, a shared pain, and a shared promise to never let go. They were headed to Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, a town they'd sworn never to return to. Their grandfather, Harold Miller, had died 2 weeks ago, and his will was to be read tomorrow. The man who'd raised them after their parents' car accident, who'd taught them to fish and fix engines, had also cast them out at 17 when they came out as gay. "No grandson of mine will shame this family," he'd bellowed, his voice shaking the walls of their old farmhouse. They'd left with nothing but each other, building a life in Philadelphia, scraping by but free. Now, a letter from his lawyer had summoned them back, promising revelations in his final wishes. Ethan, the eldest by 2 minutes, gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. What could he possibly have to say? He muttered, glancing at his brothers. Noah, the dreamer, stared out at the rain, while Caleb, the fighter, clenched his jaw, his fist tight around the letter. Willow Creek hadn't changed. The diner still had its flickering neon sign. The church still loomed over the square, and the air carried the same heavy silence. They checked into a cheap motel, the kind with peeling wallpaper and a buzzing vending machine. In their room, Noah broke the silence. "Do you think he regretted it?" His voice was soft, almost hopeful. Caleb snorted, tossing his bag onto the bed. "Regret. He wrote us out of his life. Noah. He doesn't get to rewrite the story now." Ethan stayed quiet, unpacking his bag with mechanical precision. He didn't want to hope, but a part of him, a small, stubborn part, wondered if the old man had softened in the end. The next morning, they walked to the lawyer's office, a small brick building across from the town hall. The air was crisp, the kind of October chill that seeped into your bones. Inside, the lawyer, Mr. Grayson, greeted them with a nervous smile. He was a wiry man in his 50s, his desk cluttered with papers. "I'm glad you came," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Your grandfather, he left something for you." Caleb leaned forward, his voice sharp. "What? A sermon? Another lecture?" Grayson held up a hand. "It's a letter. And the will. Of course. But the letter, he insisted you read it together. After the will is read." The reading began with the usual formalities: land to the church, savings to a distant cousin, the farmhouse to be sold. The triplets sat stiffly, their shoulders brushing in the cramped office. Then Grayson paused, pulling out a sealed envelope. "This is for you 3, he said, his voice softening. "But first, the will has one condition." He cleared his throat. "Harold left you each a share of his estate equal to what he left the church, but only if you fulfill a task. He wants you to restore the old community center he built in the 80s. It's falling apart, and he believed you 3 could bring it back." Ethan's breath caught. The community center was Harold's pride, a place where he'd hosted barbecues, taught kids to box, and held town meetings. It was also where he'd caught Ethan kissing his first boyfriend, sparking the fight that ended their family. Why us? Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Grayson shrugged. He didn't say. But he was adamant. You have 1 month. If you don't do it, your share goes to the church. Caleb laughed bitterly. So he's still controlling us, even from the grave. Ethan shot him a look. We don't have to do it. We can walk away. But Noah shook his head, his eyes bright with something Ethan hadn't seen in years' hope. What if this is his way of making things right? What if the letter explains it? Caleb rolled his eyes, but Ethan saw the flicker of curiosity in his brother's face. They'd spent years building walls around their hearts, but Harold's shadow still loomed large. They drove to the community center that afternoon, a sagging building on the edge of town. Its paint was peeling, windows cracked, and the sign reading Miller Community Hub was barely legible. Inside, it smelled of dust and memories. Ethan ran a hand over the old boxing ring, remembering Harold's gruff voice coaching him through jabs. Noah wandered to the stage where he'd once recited poetry, his fingers tracing the faded curtain. Caleb kicked a loose floorboard, muttering, "This place is a dump. He's setting us up to fail." As the sun set, they sat on the steps outside, passing a thermos of coffee. Ethan broke the silence. We don't owe him anything. But what if Noah's right? What if there's more to this? Caleb sighed, his tough exterior cracking. Fine. We'll fix the damn place. But if that letter's just another lecture, I'm burning it. Noah smiled faintly, leaning against Ethan's shoulder. For the first time in years, they felt like a unit again, bound by a fragile thread of possibility. They started work the next day, armed with tools borrowed from a local hardware store. The town watched them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Some remembered them as Harold's boys. Others whispered about the disgrace that drove them away. Ethan ignored the stares, focusing on patching the roof. Noah sketched plans for the interior, his artist's eye seeing potential in the decay. Caleb tackled the plumbing, cursing under his breath but working with a fierce determination. They fell into a rhythm. Their difference is Ethan's pragmatism, Noah's idealism, Caleb's fire balancing each other. By the end of the first week, they'd made progress, but the weight of the past lingered. At night, they'd sit in their motel room, talking about everything but Harold. Ethan shared stories of his job as a mechanic. Noah spoke of his art classes, and Caleb admitted he'd been boxing again, channeling his anger into the ring. They were rebuilding more than a building, they were rebuilding themselves. But the letter loomed over them, unopened, waiting for the task to be done. And in Willow Creek, secrets never stayed buried for long. The community center's roof groaned under Ethan's hammer, each swing a release of years of pent-up frustration. The triplets had been at it for 10 days. Their hands blistered, their clothes dusted with grime. Willow Creek's whispers followed them. Some townsfolk offered coffee or tools. Others crossed the street to avoid them. Ethan didn't care. He focused on the work, on the rhythm of nails and wood. But his mind kept drifting to the letter. What could Harold possibly say that would undo the pain of that night 6 years ago? Noah, sketching new layouts for the center's stage, was the optimist. He believed in second chances, even for a man who'd shattered their world. Maybe he wrote it when he knew he was dying, Noah said one evening. his pencil pausing over a sketch of a mural. Maybe he saw things differently. Caleb, wrestling with a rusted pipe, scoffed. You're dreaming. Noah. He probably wants to lecture us from beyond the grave. Ethan stayed quiet, sanding a beam, but he felt the same tug of hope and dread. The letter was a Pandora's box, and they were all afraid to open it. The center was coming together, though. The roof was patched, the windows replaced, and Noah's vision for a community art space was taking shape. They'd found old photos in a storage room, faded Polaroids of town dances. Harold grinning with kids in the boxing ring. Even one of the triplets as toddlers, splashing in a kiddie pool. Ethan tucked that one into his wallet, a small ache in his chest. They'd been happy once, before the world got complicated. One afternoon, a woman named Clara, who'd run the diner for decades, stopped by with a thermos of soup. She was one of the few who'd never judged them. Your grandpa was a stubborn mule, she said, handing Ethan a bowl. But he loved you boys. Never stopped talking about you, even after you left. Caleb raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Then why'd he kick us out? Clara sighed, her eyes soft. He was a product of his time. Didn't know how to handle it. But he missed you. Kept your room just as you left it. Her words lingered, stirring something in Ethan. That night, he couldn't sleep, staring at the motel ceiling. Noah was sketching by lamplight, and Caleb was shadowboxing in the corner, his fists cutting the air. You think Clara's right? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Noah looked up, hopeful. Maybe he didn't know how to say sorry while he was alive. Caleb stopped, his gloves dropping. Sorry doesn't fix what he did. But I want to know what's in that letter. The next day, trouble arrived. A group of local teens, egged on by old prejudices, spray-painted slurs across the center's freshly painted walls. Ethan's blood boiled as he scrubbed the paint, his brothers working beside him in grim silence. Noah's hands shook, and Caleb's jaw was tight enough to crack. This town hasn't changed, Caleb muttered. But then, something unexpected happened. A few neighbors showed up. Clara, the hardware store owner, even the pastor's daughter with paint rollers and apologies. Not everyone here's like that, Clara said, rolling paint over the graffiti. Give us a chance. The triplets exchanged glances, a silent agreement to keep going. They worked late into the night, the center glowing under new lights they'd wired. Noah painted a mural on the entrancia vibrant tree with roots intertwining, symbolizing their bond. Ethan watched him, pride swelling. Caleb, usually so guarded, clapped Noah's shoulder. Not bad. Artist. For a moment, they were just brothers, not outcasts. But the past wasn't done with them. The next morning, Grayson called. There's a problem, he said, his voice tense. The church is contesting the will. They're saying you're not fit to inherit because you're, well, you know. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Let me guess. They want the money for themselves. Grayson sighed. They've got a lawyer. You need to finish the center by the deadline, or they'll push to have you disqualified. Caleb overheard and slammed his fist on the table. They're not taking this from us. Not after everything. Noah's face hardened, a rare fire in his eyes. "We'll finish it. For us, not for them." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of their unity. They weren't just fighting for an inheritance, they were fighting for their place in a town that had rejected them, for the right to be seen. They doubled their efforts, working through rain and exhaustion. Ethan organized volunteers. Noah led art workshops for kids, and Caleb taught boxing classes, his gruff demeanor softening as the teens responded to him. The center was becoming a hub again, alive with laughter and purpose. But the deadline loomed, and the letter remained unopened. A silent promise or threat. Ethan caught Noah staring at it one night, tucked in Grayson's envelope on the motel dresser. "You want to open it now?" Ethan asked. Noah shook his head. "Not until we're done." It's what he wanted. As the days ticked down, the triplets found themselves changing. Ethan felt a flicker of forgiveness, Noah a spark of courage, and Caleb a softening of his anger. Willow Creek was still flawed, but it was also home, and they were carving out a space in it. The center's grand reopening was set for the final day of the month, and the letter would be read that night. Whatever it held, they'd face it together. The community center hummed with life as the reopening approached, its walls now bright with Noah's mural and fresh paint. Ethan coordinated the final touches, stringing lights, setting up chairs, testing the sound system. Caleb, surprisingly, had become a favorite among the teens, his boxing classes drawing a crowd. Noah's art workshops were packed, kids splashing paint with abandon. The triplets were exhausted but driven, their bond tightening with every hammer swing and shared glance. Yet, the church's challenge hung over them like a storm cloud, and the unopened letter burned in Ethan's mind. The town was split. Some embraced the center's revival, showing up with casseroles and encouragement. Others, led by Pastor Reynolds, the church's leader, whispered about sin and outsiders. Ethan overheard them at the diner, their words sharp as knives. "Those boys don't belong here," Reynolds said, his voice carrying. "Harold's money should serve God, not them." Ethan's fists clenched, but he walked away. They'd prove them wrong by finishing what they started. One evening, Noah found a box in the center's attic, old journals, letters, and a photo of Harold with their parents, smiling at a picnic. Noah's eyes welled up as he showed it to his brothers. "He wasn't always so hard," he said. Caleb frowned, but his voice softened. "Yeah, well, he chose to be." Ethan touched the photo, remembering Harold's laugh, rare but warm. The man was a paradox, gruff yet generous, loving yet unforgiving. The letter might hold answers, but it could also deepen the wound. The church's lawyer, a slick man named Hargrove, visited the next day. He strolled through the center, his smile cold. "Impressive work," he said, eyeing the polished floors. "But the will's conditions are strict. One misstep, and the estate's ours." Caleb bristled, stepping forward, but Ethan grabbed his arm. "We'll meet the deadline," Ethan said, his voice steady. Hargrove smirked. "We'll see. The town's watching." That night, a storm hit Willow Creek, lightning cracking the sky. The center's roof, still fragile, sprang leaks. The triplets scrambled, tarps flapping as they climbed ladders in the rain. Noah slipped, nearly falling. But Caleb caught him, their hands locking. "Not losing you," Caleb growled, pulling him up. Ethan watched, his heart swelling. They were stronger together, unbreakable despite the world's attempts to tear them apart. By morning, the damage was minimal, but time was running out. The reopening was in 3 days, and the center still needed wiring and plumbing fixes. Volunteers poured in, moved by the triplets' determination. Clara brought her grandson, who shyly asked Noah for art tips. The pastor's daughter, Sarah, defied her father to help, her quiet presence a rebellion. Even old Mr. Thompson, who'd once called them trouble, showed up with his toolbox. Harold would be proud, he muttered, avoiding their eyes. Ethan wasn't sure if he believed it, but it fueled him. Noah, usually the quiet one, took charge of the reopenings program. He planned a community showcase, art, music, even a boxing demo led by Caleb. "This place isn't just for us," Noah said, his voice firm. "It's for everyone who's ever felt left out." Ethan saw a new strength in his brother, a fire kindled by their shared purpose. Caleb, too, was changing, his anger giving way to moments of warmth, like when he high-fived a kid after a sparring match. The night before the reopening, Ethan found Caleb outside the center, staring at the stars. "You ever wonder what Mom and Dad would think?" Caleb asked, his voice low. Ethan sat beside him, the grass damp under them. "They'd be proud we're still together." Caleb nodded, his eyes distant. "I miss them. And I miss him. Sometimes." It was the closest Caleb had come to admitting he cared about Harold's letter. The morning of the reopening dawned bright, the center gleaming under the October sun. Townsfolk filled the space, their chatter mingling with the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. Noah's mural was a centerpiece, its vibrant colors drawing gasps. Caleb's boxing demo had kids cheering, and Ethan's speech short. Heartfelt thanked the town for their support, even those who doubted them. Pastor Reynolds sat in the back, his face unreadable. As the event wound down, Grayson arrived with the letter. The triplets retreated to a quiet corner, the envelope heavy in Ethan's hands. "Ready?" he asked. Noah nodded, his eyes bright. Caleb shrugged, but his hands shook. They'd rebuilt the center, reclaimed their place in Willow Creek, and faced their past. Now, it was time to hear Harold's final words. The letter trembled in Ethan's hands as he broke the seal, the weight of 6 years of silence pressing down on them. The community center buzzed faintly in the background, the reopening's success still fresh. But in this corner, it was just the triplets and their grandfather's ghost. Noah leaned closer, his breath shallow, while Caleb crossed his arms, his face a mask of defiance hiding a flicker of hope. Ethan unfolded the paper, Harold's familiar scrawl filling the page. He read aloud, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "My boys," it began. "If you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've brought the center back to life. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be." Ethan paused, glancing at his brothers. Noah's eyes were wide, Caleb's jaw tight. He continued, "I failed you. I let my pride and my fears drive you away. I was raised in a world that didn't understand you, and I didn't try hard enough to learn. The words hit like a punch. Caleb's mask cracked, his eyes glistening. Noah gripped Ethan's arm, urging him to keep reading. I built that center to bring people together, but I tore us apart. Harold wrote. I spent years regretting that night, too stubborn to reach out. When I got sick, I knew I had to make it right, even if it's too late. Ethan's voice wavered. Harold had been sick. They hadn't known. The letter went on, detailing his cancer, his isolation, his realization that love should have trumped everything. I'm leaving you the estate. Not just money, but a chance to build something better than I did. Harold wrote. The center is yours to shape. A place for everyone, no matter who they are. I hope you can forgive an old fool. I loved you always, even when I didn't show it. The letter ended with a shaky signature, dated a month before his death. Silence fell. Noah was crying softly, Caleb staring at the floor, Ethan clutching the letter like a lifeline. He didn't hate us, Noah whispered. Caleb's voice was hoarse. Why didn't he say this when he was alive? Ethan didn't have an answer, but the letter felt like a bridge, fragile but real, connecting them to the man who'd raised them. The church's challenge wasn't over. Pastor Reynolds and Hargrove filed a formal contest, claiming the triplets' lifestyle violated Harold's intent. The triplets met with Grayson the next day, the letter tucked in Ethan's pocket like a talisman. They're arguing you're unfit, Grayson said, his face grim. But the will's clear. You fulfilled the condition. The letter strengthens your case. It shows Harold's intent was reconciliation. Caleb slammed his fist on the table. They just want the money. Noah, usually the peacemaker, spoke up, his voice firm. We're not giving up. This is our home, too. Ethan nodded, feeling their unity like armor. They'd fought for the center, for each other, and now for their grandfather's legacy. The legal battle loomed, but the town was shifting. The reopening had changed minds. Sarah, the pastor's daughter, spoke out publicly, calling her father's stance unchristian. Clara rallied supporters, and even old Thompson wrote a letter to the local paper, praising the triplets' work. The center was thriving, hosting art classes, boxing matches, and community dinners. It was becoming what Harold envisioned, a place for everyone. Ethan took the lead in court preparations, his mechanic's precision applied to legal documents. Noah designed flyers to rally support, his art a quiet rebellion. Caleb trained harder, channeling his anger into the ring. But he also started mentoring a shy teen who reminded him of himself. The triplets were no longer just Harold's boys, they were Willow Creek's sons, reclaiming their place. One night, they sat on the center steps, the letter between them. Do you forgive him? Noah asked, his voice soft. Caleb sighed, his anger softened by time. I don't know, but I want to. Ethan touched the letter, feeling Harold's presence. He gave us this chance. That's something. They looked at the center, its lights glowing, a beacon in the dark. Whatever the court decided, they'd already won something greater: their bond, their purpose, and a home they'd fought for. The courthouse in Willow Creek was a squat, gray building, its steps worn smooth by decades of disputes. Inside, the triplets sat shoulder to shoulder, their faces set as Hargrove argued the church's case. Harold Miller was a man of faith, he said, his voice slick. He'd never intend his legacy to support their choices. Ethan's jaw clenched. Noah's hands twisted in his lap. And Caleb glared, his knuckles white. Grayson countered, holding up the letter. This is Harold's true intent. He wanted his grandsons to have a future, to build a community for all. The judge, a stern woman named Carter, listened impassively. She'd grown up in Willow Creek, knew its history, its divisions. Ethan caught her eye, wondering if she saw them as outsiders or as Harold's boys. The letter was read aloud, its words echoing in the quiet room. Townsfolk packed the seats. Clara, Sarah, Thompson, and others who'd seen the center's revival. Pastor Reynolds sat rigid, his face a mask of disapproval. The air was thick with tension, the outcome uncertain. After hours of arguments, Judge Carter called a recess. The triplets stepped outside, the October air biting their skin. Noah shivered, pulling his jacket tight. What if we lose? He whispered. Caleb put an arm around him, a rare gesture. We won't. We've got each other. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The center was more than an inheritance, it was proof they belonged, that they could change things. Losing it would hurt, but they'd survived worse. Back in court, Carter's ruling came swiftly. Harold Miller's will is clear, she said, her voice steady. The triplets fulfilled the condition. The letter confirms his intent was reconciliation, not exclusion. The estate is theirs. A murmur rippled through the room. Reynolds stood, his face red, but Hargrove pulled him back. Grayson smiled, clapping Ethan's shoulder. You did it, he whispered. The triplets left the courthouse in a daze, the weight of victory sinking in. They drove to the center, now officially theirs, and walked through its halls. Noah's mural glowed under the lights. Caleb's boxing ring stood ready for the next class, and Ethan's repairs held strong. This was their legacy, not just Harold's. They sat in the office, the letter on the table, and talked about what came next. Noah wanted to expand the art programs, maybe start a scholarship. Caleb planned to coach more kids, give them a place to belong. Ethan saw the center as a bridge, connecting the town's past and future. They'd make it a haven for anyone who felt outcast, a place where love didn't come with conditions. The letter had given them closure, but the center gave them purpose. That night, Clara hosted a celebration at the diner. The triplets arrived to cheers, the room packed with supporters. Sarah hugged Noah, her defiance a quiet victory. Thompson raised a glass, his gruff voice warm. To Harold's boys. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Noah smiled through tears. And Caleb, for once, didn't hide his grin. They were home, not just in Willow Creek, but in each other. But the past wasn't fully settled. A week later, Ethan found a note slipped under the center's door. It was from Reynolds. Short and scrawled, "You won this round, but the town's not yours." Caleb wanted to confront him, but Noah shook his head. Let him stew. We're not here to fight, we're here to build. Ethan agreed, tucking the note away. They'd face whatever came. Together. The center thrived. Its doors open to all. Kids painted with Noah. Teens sparred with Caleb. And Ethan organized community nights. The laughter echoing late into the evening. The triplets were no longer just the disowned grandsons, they were the heart of Willow Creek's revival. Harold's letter had changed everything. Not just by giving them the estate, but by showing them they could forgive, heal, and create something new. Winter settled over Willow Creek, dusting the community center with snow. The triplets had transformed it into a beacon, its lights warm against the cold. Ethan oversaw operations, his steady hand keeping things running. Noah's art classes grew, his murals spreading to the town's library and school. Caleb's boxing program was a hit, his tough love earning respect from kids who'd once feared him. But the triplets' new piece was fragile. Reynolds' note was a reminder that not everyone accepted them. One morning, Ethan found graffiti on the center's back wall, harsh words, like the ones from months ago. He scrubbed it off before Noah or Caleb saw. But the act left him uneasy. The town had embraced them, but pockets of resentment lingered. At the diner, Clara confirmed his fears. Reynolds is stirring folks up, she said, pouring coffee. He's calling the center a bad influence. Some listen. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. They'd fought too hard to let this unravel. Noah, ever the optimist, suggested a town hall meeting at the center. Let's show them what we're about, he said, sketching a flyer. Caleb was skeptical but agreed, his fists itching for a fight he couldn't throw. Ethan saw the wisdom in Noah's plan. Transparency could disarm their critics. They spread the word, inviting everyone to see the center's impact. Sarah helped, her presence a quiet challenge to her father's rhetoric. The meeting was packed, standing room only. Ethan spoke first, his voice calm but firm. This center's for everyone, kids, families, anyone who needs a place to belong. Noah shared stories of his students, kids who'd found confidence through art. Caleb, to everyone's surprise, spoke last, his voice raw. I was angry for years. This place gave me a way to turn that into something good. Don't take that from these kids. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Even some of Reynolds' supporters looked swayed. But Reynolds wasn't done. He stood, his voice booming. This center was Harold's legacy, not a platform for your agenda. Caleb's eyes flashed, but Noah grabbed his hand, grounding him. Sarah stood, her voice steady. Dad, Harold wanted unity, not division. These boys are his legacy. The crowd murmured, some nodding. Reynolds sat, his face tight, but he had no rebuttal. The meeting shifted the tide. More families joined the center's programs, and the graffiti stopped. Ethan felt a cautious hope, but he kept Reynolds' note in his desk, a reminder to stay vigilant. The triplets were changing Willow Creek, but they were also changing themselves. Ethan was less guarded, Noah bolder, Caleb softer. They'd found a home, not just in the center, but in the community they were building. One evening, Noah found an old journal in the center's office, Harold's, filled with notes about the triplets as kids. Ethan's got my stubborn streak. One entry read, Noah's heart's too big for this world. Caleb's fire will either break him or make him. Noah read it aloud, his voice thick. Caleb laughed, wiping his eyes. Old man knew us better than we thought. Ethan smiled, feeling Harold's presence, not as a shadow, but as a foundation. The center's first anniversary approached, and the triplets planned a festival art exhibits, a boxing tournament, a community dance. The town buzzed with excitement, volunteers pitching in. Sarah reconciled with her father, who attended a boxing match, his presence a small step toward peace. Clara baked pies. Thompson fixed the stage, and the kids painted banners. The festival was a celebration of what they'd built, a testament to their resilience. As the festival neared, Ethan looked at his brothers, their faces lit by the center's lights. They'd come back to Willow Creek broken, but they'd found something stronger: their bond, their purpose, and a legacy they'd shaped themselves. The letter had been the spark, but they were the fire. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they'd face them as they always had together. The festival day dawned crisp and clear, Willow Creek alive with color and sound. The community center's lawn was a riot of activity booths with Noah's students' art, a ring for Caleb's boxing demos, and a stage where Ethan would MC. The triplets moved through the crowd, their smiles genuine but tinged with the weight of the past year. They'd won the estate, rebuilt the center, and earned the town's respect. But the scars of their disownment lingered, as did Reynolds' quiet opposition. Noah's art exhibit was a hit, kids proudly showing parents their work. One shy girl, Mia, gave Noah a painting a tree like his mural, with 3 figures at its roots. "That's you and your brothers," she said, blushing. Noah hugged her, his eyes wet. Caleb's boxing tournament drew cheers, his students sparring with confidence he'd instilled. Ethan watched, pride swelling. His brothers had found their callings, and he'd found his keeping them together, keeping the center alive. The dance that night was the heart of the festival. Lanterns hung from the center's rafters, music spilling into the night. Townsfolk of all ages swayed, laughed, and ate Clara's pies. Sarah danced with Noah, her smile bright. Thompson, gruff as ever, pulled Ethan aside. "You boys did good," he said, handing him a beer. Harold's smiling somewhere. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. For the first time, he felt Harold's love, not his judgment. But the night wasn't without tension. Reynolds appeared, standing at the edge of the crowd, his eyes narrowed. Caleb noticed, his fists clenching, but Ethan shook his head. "Let him watch," he said. "He can't undo this." Noah agreed, pulling Caleb to the dance floor, their laughter a defiance. The town was theirs, not his. As the night wound down, the triplets took the stage. Ethan spoke, his voice carrying over the crowd. "This center's a promise to you, to us, to anyone who needs a home. Thank you for being part of it." Noah added, "It's about love, not hate." Caleb, usually silent, stepped forward. "We lost a lot to be here, but we gained more." The crowd cheered, their applause a wave of acceptance. After the festival, the triplets sat in the center's office, the letter on the table. They'd read it countless times, but it still held power. "He gave us a second chance," Noah said, his voice soft. Caleb nodded, His anger long faded. And we took it. Ethan looked at his brothers, their faces lit by a single lamp. We're not just Harold's boys anymore. We're us. The next week, they found a new purpose. Noah proposed a mentorship program for at-risk youth, using art and boxing to build confidence. Caleb wanted to expand the boxing gym, make it a safe space for kids like him, who'd carried too much anger. Ethan envisioned community outreach, connecting Willow Creek to nearby towns, spreading their message of inclusion. The center was their legacy now, a living testament to their resilience. Reynolds' influence waned, his supporters drifting to the center's programs. Sarah told Noah her father had started reading the letter, his convictions softening. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Clara, ever the town's heart, kept the triplets grounded, her diner their unofficial headquarters. One evening, Ethan found an old photo in the center's storage room. Noah and Caleb at 10, fishing with Harold. He pinned it to the office wall, a reminder of the good before the pain. They'd lost their grandfather, but they'd found themselves, and they'd built something he'd be proud of. The center wasn't just a building, it was their home, their heart, and their future. Spring bloomed in Willow Creek, the community center now a cornerstone of the town. The triplets had settled into their roles: Ethan the planner, Noah the dreamer, Caleb the fire. The mentorship program thrived, kids flocking to Noah's art classes and Caleb's gym. Ethan's outreach brought in grants, expanding the center's reach. The letter, now framed in the office, was a quiet reminder of their journey, its words etched in their hearts. One morning, a package arrived in an old tackle box, sent by Grayson. Inside were letters Harold had written but never sent, each addressed to the triplets. Ethan read them aloud, his voice thick. "I'm proud of you," one said. "I was wrong," said another. The last, written days before his death, read, "You're my boys. Always." Noah cried. Caleb gripped his hand, and Ethan felt a weight lift. Harold had loved them, even in his silence. The town had changed, too. Reynolds attended a center event, his presence awkward but significant. Sarah said he was wrestling with his beliefs, the letter chipping away at his walls. Clara hosted a community breakfast, the diner packed with faces old and new. Thompson, now a regular volunteer, taught kids to whittle, his gruffness a comfort. The triplets' bond was their strength. Ethan found peace in routine, Noah in creation, Caleb in teaching. They'd faced rejection, rebuilt a legacy, and carved out a home. One evening, they sat on the center steps, the sunset painting the sky. Noah spoke first. "We did more than fix a building. We fixed us." Caleb nodded, his voice soft. "And we're not done." Ethan looked at his brothers, their faces reflecting the light. "We're just getting started." The center's second year began with a new mural, painted by Noah's Stedensa tree with countless branches, symbolizing Willow Creek's diversity. Caleb's gym hosted a regional tournament, kids from across Pennsylvania competing. Ethan secured a partnership with a nearby college, offering internships to the center's youth. The triplets were no longer outcasts, they were leaders, their story a beacon for others. Harold's letter had changed everything, not by erasing the past, but by giving them a chance to rewrite their future. They'd forgiven him, not for his sake, but for theirs. The center stood as proof that love could heal, that family could be chosen, and that home was where you built it. As the triplets locked the center that night, their laughter echoed, a sound of resilience, hope, and unbreakable bonds.